But let's get into that first big story we got from Timcast.com. Illinois governor gave $300,000 of federal relief funding to Black Lives Matter. This is $300,000 in federal COVID-19 relief funds went to the Lake County chapter of BLM. I could not, when I saw this, you know what I wanted to do? I went on Twitter and I was like, what do I tweet? And I was like, oh, I know. I'll tweet, are you paying attention? Wait a minute.
Oh my gosh.
No, I can't tweet that. For not only does Jack Posobiec tweet that for everything, I'm like, I think we're paying attention now, especially if you're following me on Twitter. So I just said, I'm not even going to ask. I know you're paying attention. It's this bad. Let me pull up their official documentation. This is COVID-19 relief funds. Check it out. Your business was shut down. You're in massive debt. You're getting evicted from your house. Your business was burned down in a riot. So money was taken from your tax dollars or printed and borrowed. And the Democratic administration from the federal government gives it to the states. And then Illinois says, we're going to give it right back to BLM. Here it is right here. Look at this. Under the guise of criminal justice and crime intervention, Black Lives Matter got $300,000. When we talk about January 6th, when we talk about the federal government going after only one political faction, letting the rioters do whatever they want, barely prosecuting anybody, going after a bunch of MAGA mimas who were let in the Capitol, and then you can see they're directly funding them. You know what? Maybe the reason they're not going to charge any of these rioters with terrorism, because then they'd all basically be committing some kind of sedition and insurrection, and then they would be ineligible. So when they sued Madison Cawthorn saying he couldn't run for re-election, I tweeted out, Kamala Harris is ineligible to run for public office because she engaged in insurrection against these United States by providing material support to those engaged in insurrection and terror against this country.
Amen. So BLM is kind of the perfect scam here because there are absolutely no results needed. What are the strings attached to when you give them money? What are they going to say? It's part of what's brilliant about this kind of political activism, generally speaking. The worse the problem gets, the more they can claim that they're needed and the more they can claim that you have to give them money or else you don't care about the problem. On top of that, when it comes to JB, I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with him or if the audience knows much about him, but being from the state of Illinois originally, I can give you a few facts on him that will leave you unsurprised with the fact that he would mismanage federal funds in this way. Firstly, he is every single thing that the left claims to hate, and he's all of them at the same time. It's almost amazing. He is a billionaire trust fund baby venture capitalist. And in the state of Illinois, he raised the collective tax burden by $5.25 billion, still couldn't balance the budget. He tried to raise it $8 billion, but wasn't able to. But he himself does everything he can to avoid taxes. He had a second house, which was a mansion, and he had every single toilet removed from it, so it would be considered uninhabitable when the tax assessor came, and he wouldn't have to pay. Yes, and so he wouldn't have to pay as much in taxes. He's an absolute swamp creature.
So we could take the toilets out of here and just put we could dig a hole in the backyard and I don't got to pay taxes?
And you have to pay some taxes, but it's assessed as being at a lower value if it's uninhabited or uninhabitable.
Wow. That's amazing.
Very slimy.
Well, if there's anything that the government's really good at, it's wasting your money and scamming people. And this is a perfect example of this. Where did that money go to? An organization that can't even account for $60 million, as of course there's ongoing investigations into BLM right now. I mean, what did you expect? And then, I mean, there's so many different consequences here. There's so many different ramifications here. There's so many different ways we could even talk about this specific story. But this is how the government chooses to take your money that you gave them.
They create the problem.
Exactly.
Then they take your money to fix the problem and give it back to the people creating the problem, or partly.
And then make more problems.
Right. So the president of the Lake County BLM chapter, Clyde McLemore, was arrested in Kenosha in 2021 and charged with felony battery of a police officer. So look, you got somebody who is actually arrested for a violent crime being given money under the guise of preventing violent crimes in Chicago. Now, innocent until proven guilty, of course, always. And with a lot of the stuff going on these past few years, I'm not necessarily going to sit here and just blindly trust cops or anything like that. But BLM, this is not the first scandal. It'll certainly not be the last scandal. I think what people need to understand, I don't know how else to say it, there is a powerful element of the government that hates you, that is actively funding people who have destroyed lives and are destroying your businesses and your homes. And we are watching them do it with your own
Yeah, exactly.
They funded an organization that called for the disbanding of the family unit. They they funded an organization that literally has Marxist talking points that wants to, of course, spread divide and conquer techniques that have been effectively deployed in the United States and have worsened race relations here in this country.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was going to ask the question, could you imagine any right-wing organizations receiving this kind of money from the federal government, like the Patriot Prayer Group? But then I realized they're pretty much entirely employed by the federal government, aren't they?
Yeah.
Patriot Prayer?
Patriot Prayer Group? I'm sorry, what's the organization?
Oath Keepers.
Patriot
Oath
Fund?
Keepers, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about, I don't know what's going on with Patriot Prayer guys, but Oath Keepers apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. We were talking about this the other day with Julie Kelly, where you have all of a sudden these people, everyone's asking like, why aren't they being charged in the January 6th, riot? And then all of a sudden they get charged because they were going to be called as witnesses, and now they can plead the fifth. Yo, dude.
Very sketchy.
I got to be honest, though. I don't want to be Debbie Downer. I don't want to be Negative Nancy, right? For some reason, we have these alliterative words for being, depressive. But I really do think that we're seeing these stories. It's exposing what's going on. And it used to be that this stuff happened and we didn't even know it was happening around us. So what you got to watch out for is, because I fall victim to this sometimes as well. You read all of this really bad stuff and you're like, man, things must be really bad. And then I stop and I'm like, actually, we wouldn't even know this was happening 10 years ago.
Exactly.
So it's actually, it's bad it happened, but we've got investigative reporters exposing all of this stuff. That's pretty good.
Yeah, there's a theory out there is, people are asking themselves, is the world becoming a worser place, or are we just finding out exactly how the world really works? And I think we're finding out exactly how the world really works, and there's consequences for negative actions. For every action, there's an equal reaction. That's Newton's third law. And even just, yesterday, we had the Indiana Attorney General come out and say that BLM is a scam, and he said that the House of Cards is starting to fall, as of course there's major questions about the $60 million that were given to them by major institutions, by very powerful players, and now even governments, not just multinational corporations pushing an agenda, not just BlackRock and the ESG social credit score, but there's so much influence here when it comes to pushing this narrative, and the unraveling of it, it's going to have equal consequences in my opinion.
There's something interesting to be said about individuals choosing to donate, but the government funding, I have to wonder if, I'm willing to bet Illinois is not the only state that did this.
Absolutely not.
I'd love to know to the extent to which you've got these smaller groups. Just think about this. We had riots all over the country. It was not centrally organized. Not necessarily. It may be through perhaps the Democratic Party and like groups like Act Blue that were bailing out a lot of these people. But the funding that went to these smaller groups in all of these different places, where did they get that money from? If Illinois was giving it to a local chapter, is government funding them in other areas? I'd have to assume yes.
And most importantly, what did they do with that money is the bigger question asked here. And it could be reasonable to ponder that maybe they don't want to release the records of the $60 million because now the California and the Washington Attorney General are demanding the financial disclosures of where their money came from. You could argue that maybe there's even more governments that were involved here with the funding of BLM that they don't want publicly released, and that's why the data hasn't been out there.
Do you remember that there was that guy in California who had his own group called Black Lives Matter, and he raised like $300,000 on his own, and then they went after him and they destroyed his life. He owned it before they did, and they went after him.
So this was an actual activist. This wasn't some guy trying to.
But it was
I repeat myself, right? But was this actually someone who believed in the cause, trying to raise money, or was he using their name?
When BLM first started, there was no like centralized organization or anything. So he was like, okay, I'll make a nonprofit. We'll call it this. And he said his goal was to bring the community and the police together so that we can end, this clash and this conflict. Right. That flies in the face of what they're actually trying to do. They're trying to abolish the police.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they accused him of being a charlatan, a fraud. His fundraising was all suspended. They went after his finances, and he was legitimate. He was like, as far as I know, he was totally legitimate.
Well, and that's the thing. They always go, say Black Lives Matter as if that's all they actually want. But they know if you say BLM, what you're actually saying is I support this organization. And the reason we know this is because this guy was literally saying in the most direct way possible, Black Lives Matter. And they said, nope, can't do that.
It's time we recognize this idea of the working class and the elites and these other classes based on 100 years ago, these writings of, 100-year-old dudes, is wrong, or at least needs to be updated. Because how do you explain these urban, unemployed leftists who are not working class, but they claim to be, and they hold these insane ideologies, and they support these insane cultural ideologies? They're not. The truckers are the working class. These people aren't, I refer to them somewhat as intelligentsia because they're college educated, but they're not the intelligentsia. They're not smart people.
No, they're not.
They're not writing books, and they're not writing poems, and they're not saying, I challenge the... They're just walking around going like, tell me whatever to do, Walmart. They're like the corporate NPC class.
Yeah, they're repeating statements instead of creating art, instead of creating entertainment, instead of actually building stuff. They're literally just saying, just tell me what to say and I'll say it. Tell me what I need to do to go along and get this perfect governmental, environmental, social credit score that's going to, of course, profit my business at the end. It's not a stretch to imagine that more governments supported BLM financially because they supported them in many different ways. Whether it's George Soros appointing a whole bunch of attorney generals that implemented a lot of their policies, whether it's government officials bailing them out, whether it's government officials literally supporting them, giving them permits to march, whether it's Dr. Fauci and Bill de Blasio excusing their mass marches and mobilizations, saying that they're good for the general public, rather than, of course, attack anyone who was going against protest against the state. That was bad, and that was causing sickness and COVID to spread. Again, there was so much hypocrisy. The state coddled this movement and brought it to a very significant place in our culture that has had horrible effects on everyone.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.